Hello, Vita. Your lecture continue. The enemy. If your food runs out before you catch a boat, he said, signal me two flashes at the same instant. The sun drops over the horizon. Runs out means finishes, and sun drops means the sun sets. Horizon means the line at which the earth's surface and the sky appear to meet skyline. And do not signal in darkness, for it will be seen. If you are alright but still there, signal me once. You will find fresh fish easy to catch, but you must eat them raw. Raw means uncooked. A fire would be seen. Okay, the young man breathed. So thou instructed the man. He said that if his stock of food finished before he found a Korean fishing boat, he could signal him with two flashes of the torch at dusk time. He also asked him to be careful not to signal when it was dark because light was more visible in the darkness as compared to dusk. He added that man could man could find fish in the sea near the island, but he had to eat it raw. He was not supposed to cook it because fire would be spotted by guards and put in danger. The man drew a breath on hearing the instruction and said, okay. He was dressed now in Japanese clothes which thou had given him, and at the last moment thou wrapped a black cloth about his blunt head. Now, thou said, the man wore the traditional Japanese dress that thou gave him to wear. Finally, thou wrapped a black cloth around his head to hide his golden colored hair. The young American, without a word, shook thou's hand warmly and then walked quite well across the floor and down the step into the darkness of the garden. Once, twice, thou saw his light flash to find his way, but that would not be suspected, means doubted. He waited until from the store there was one more flash, then he closed the partition. That night he slept. The American man shook hands with thou as he walked away towards the boat. He used the torch twice to find his way, but the guard would not doubt that. So the waited till he saw the torchlight once more as the man boarded the boat. So thou closed the door of the partition and slept well that night, as he had finally got rid of men. You say that the man escaped. The journal asked faintly. He had been operated upon a week before, an emergency operation to which thou had been called in the night. For 12 hours thou had not been sure the journal would live. The gallbladder. The gallbladder means the small sac-shaped organs beneath the liver in which bile is stored after secretion by the liver and before release into the intestine, was much involved. A week ago, the journal had been operated upon in an emergency in which Sdao took part. Sdao informed him that the man escaped. The journal was weak as he was recovering from the operation. For 12 hours after the operation, his condition was critical and Sdao was not sure that he would survive. They had operated upon his gallbladder. Then the old man had begun to breathe deeply again and to demand food, thou had not been able to ask about the assassin so far as he knew they had never come. The servants had returned, and Yummy had cleaned the guest room thoroughly and had burned sulfur in it. Sulfur means a chemical element used as disinfectant. Get the white man smell out of it. Nobody said anything, only the gardener was cross because cross means angry or disappointed because he had got behind with his Chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemums means a flower, quality of flower, type of flower. The journal was an old man. After the operation, gradually he started eating food and breathed deeply. Snow did not have the courage to ask him what happened to the professional killers that he had promised to send to kill the American men. Snow knew that the killers did not turn up ever. At Sadaw's home, things returned to normal. The servants returned. Yummy used sulfur to disinfect the rooms used by the American men. The servants did not speak anything. The gardener was annoyed because he had got late to plant the chrysanthemum flowers due to the incident. But after a week, Thou felt the journal was well enough to be spoken to about the prisoner. Yes, Excellency, he escaped, Thou now said. He coughed, signifying that he had not said at all he might have said, but was unwilling to disturb the general further. But the old man opened his eyes suddenly. After 1 week, Thou felt that the general was well enough, that he could discuss the man with him. Thou said that the man had escaped. Thou cupped up, which indicated that Thou had not told him everything as he did not want to disturb him. The general was reminded of his promise to send the professional killers, and he opened his eyes suddenly when he heard about the American's men. That prisoner, he said with some energy, did I not promise you I would kill him for you? The general was reminded of his promise and asked now that had he not promised him to get that man killed by his personal professional killers? You did, Excellency, Thou said. Well, the old man said in a tone of amazement, means surprise. So I did. But you see, I was suffering a good deal. The truth is, I thought of nothing but myself. In short, I forget my promise to you. Thou replied that he had promised him. The general was surprised and said that as he was suffering due to bad health, he had forgotten all about the promise that he had made. I wondered, Your Excellency, Snow murmured. It was certainly very careless of me, the general said, but you understand it was not lack of patriotism. Lack of patriotism means love for one's country, and dereliction means failure to perform one's duty. He looked anxiously at his doctor. If the matter should come out, you would understand that, wouldn't you? Snow spoke shortly that he wondered that the general had forgotten his promise. The general felt sorry that he had been careless. He added that it was neither that he did not love Japan nor that he was shrinking for his duty. He looked at Snow with curiosity as he saw sport far from him. He wondered that Thou understood his problem. Certainly, Your Excellency, Thou said. He suddenly comprehended that the journal was in the palm of his hand and that as the result he himself was perfectly safe. I can swear to your loyalty, Excellency, he said to the journal, and to use zeal against the enemy. Zeal means great energy. And Sadao said he understood the journal's position well. He understood that the journal was in his control, and as a result, Sadao was safe. Sadao said that he could swear upon the journal's loyalty towards Japan and his enthusiasm to fight the enemy. You are a good man, the journal murmured and closed his eyes. You will be rewarded. But thou search the spot of black in the toilet, see the night and his toilet means at the time of toilet, sunset or sunrise. Had his reward. There was no prick of light. Prick means slightest amount. In the dusk means in the time of sunset, no one was on the island. His prisoner was gone, safe, doubtless, for he had warned him to wait only for a Korean fishing boat. The journal was relaxed and said that Sda was a good man. He closed his eyes and said that Sda would be rewarded for his goodness. Snow got his reward when at dusk he looked towards the island and saw no trace of torchlight. This meant that the American men had found a Korean fishing boat and had gone with it safely back home. Snow did not doubt this as he had instructed the men to wait for a Korean fishing boat. He stood for a moment on the veranda, gazing out to the sea from whence the young man had come that other night, and into his mind, although without reason, there came other white faces he had known, the professor whose house he had met Hannah, Dullman, and his wife had been silly talkative woman. In spite of her wishes to be kind, he remembered his old teacher of anatomy who had been so insistent on mercy with the knife. And then he remembered the face of his fat, slenderly landlady. He had had great difficulty in finding a place to live in America because he was a Japanese. The Americans were full of prejudice, and it had been better to live in it, knowing himself their superior, how he had despised the ignorant and dirty old woman who had at last consented to house him in her miserable home. He had once tried to be grateful to her because she had, in his last year, nursed him through influenza, but it was difficult, for she was no less repulsive to him in her kindness. Now he remembered the youthful, haggard face of his prisoner, white and repulsive, strange. He thought, I wonder why I could not kill him. Sdaw stood in the veranda and recollected the past events. He looked at the sea from where the men had come that night. He had flashback of all Americans he had met in his life, the dull professor at whose house he had met Hannah, his silly, talkative wife who was very kind. He remembered his teacher of anatomy who had taught them to cut open the body with a knife. Then he remembered the fat, untidy landlady. Being a Japanese, he had found an accommodation in America with great difficulty. He hated living there, knowing that the Japanese were superior to the Americans and still being treated like inferiors. Snow disliked the dirty old woman who finally agreed to let him live in her home, which was in a bad condition. Snow tried to be thankful to her because she had taken care of him when he was struck by influenza during the last year of his stay in America. It was difficult for Sadao to be thankful to her as he hated her even though she was kind to him. Sadao hated her so much that her kindness also did not make him like her. Finally, Sadao remembered the weak face of the American prisoner. It was white in color and was terrible. So thou felt that it was strange that he could not kill his enemy. Okay, beta, this is your lesson. Your lesson finished, and tomorrow we will discuss about your exercise. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.